Artist Talk Live. Fade, we were leaving our conversation off about what happened next, right? Like how you started thinking and growing as an artist, and one of the things we're talking about is your commercial work. You're giving back to the community that gave back to you. You started the Shirt King Academy, and you ventured off and done collaborations with big corporations. Let me go back to how the younger generation is embracing you. How do you look at this new generation of hip hop culture and how they're expressing themselves, how they're styling themselves, and also how they regard you, how they regard the elders?
Well, first of all, I like to say this. When Melly Mel said movies, museums, and the Hall of Fame, that propelled me. He said that in the song, and that propelled me to that I can really actually do that. I can actually, be a part of a movie or do a movie. I can actually be in a museum, and I can actually be in the Hall of Fame. Like, I have enough body of work. Like, Mel spoke prophetically, of what our generation should be doing. And the generation today, they're living off of the foundation of what we laid. A famous guy from Fort Greene Projects once told me, he said, my elders laid down the carpet. All we do is keep the carpet clean. We just come, and clean it up, but we didn't put the nails in the carpet. And I was like, wow, that's pretty deep, So I always kept that philosophy, and the generation today, you could only go but so far without inquiring, your path, from an elder, and, like when my pops passed, it's like, wow, I don't have nobody to ask about this situation, and we take it for granted. But I was like, man, I need to ask him about, about girls. But as a grown man, I'm talking about like marriage and stuff now, like deeper stuff, not just dating or whatever, and I was like, wow, he's not there for that. And I think what these kids are realizing, that they need to go back and they need to respond to the elders, especially somebody who they feel is doing it. And I've had several come back, but it's also relational. Like, with the ASAP mob, I met each one of them individually. But when I heard that name Ferg, I just knew there was only one Ferg in Harlem. And I knew that was my homie, Ferg that turned me on to Russell athletic t-shirts, the Ferg that took me to the Eisner Brothers down on Delancey Street to get, these soft cottony t-shirts. Like, that's the only Ferg I know. And when I seen him, I was like, man, you look just like your dad. And I was like, yo, I'm your uncle. And he was like, yeah, right, So me and him bonded. Me and Rocky bonded on a whole nother level, and it's just like we just became family, and I think through them, a lot of the youth began to embrace what I was doing. But then when they did their homework, they were like, wow, it's like you came back to get us,
Right. And of course, again, you have a legacy, and you have many accolades and many relationships, as you said, in people who have really made a huge difference. And now this generation gets to see you celebrated, and also enshrined. We have your work at the museum. We're really happy about that because it's such an important part of the story. And as you can see in this image, we have 3 of your sweatshirts, but also the Audio 2 album. So music and fashion and graffiti, you've had such a tremendous impact. Now that you know that we have a museum, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, this is. I mean, it was spoken by Melly Mel. You
Exactly.
know, I mean, it's inevitable. It's inevitable that if you're doing what you know God has put in your hand to do, you know, for your life, it's gonna grow. You're not gonna shrink back. If you keep going, it's gonna eventually grow and morph into something. You know, Rakim said, "Constant elevation causes expansion." So if you're constantly elevating, you know, you're gonna expand. You know, or you're gonna implode. You know, one of the two.
Yeah, I agree. And you'll definitely see more. Well, one of the things too, again, the book has made such a huge difference in telling your story because it's illustrated. It really, it's so important for us to kind of like, cement our legacies with both scholarship and publishing and documenting, and that makes a huge difference because I think that the kind of impact you had is a lasting impact because all this, again, as you see, it recycles. And you see that by the companies that are coming to you now and saying, hey, we want that flavor again.
Mm.
We want to capture that audience, that spirit for our audience rather. And you start working with people like Beyonce. And you moved to LA for quite some time, and you've been doing a lot of work in LA.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that's your home base, but you're still collaborating with people from around the world. You mentioned Grimy earlier, your collaboration with her. Tell me about that.
Uh, Grimy is they're also graph writers too, from Barcelona and Madrid, and they've been popping. They do a lot of cut and sew, high end wear, and I guess because of them admiring what we did here in the States, like they know who we are. They know who you are. They know who I am. You know, and it just made so much sense. That I'm doing clothes and doing designs. So we got together and we came up with a plan. And it really worked out. It worked out really good because the splits are perfect down the line, and you know, and they get a chance to dig into our culture and kind of say, "Yo, we got this dude. We got one of the original heads." So it brings notoriety to any brand. But they have more of a love because they're graph writers themselves.
Do you find celebrities like Beyonce once they meet you or get to work with you that they understand your importance to the culture?
She definitely did. She said she was honored and that she knew exactly who I was. She really surprised me. But it takes you have to be an artist. I believe she's an artist. You know, she's hands on. She puts all her stuff together. So the suggestions she said were things that were in my mind that I was thinking I should do to change this. But if I can't go back if I change it. And she said, "Can you do this? Can you do that? And can you do that?" And I was like, "My goodness, these are the same thoughts that I had." So that led me to a bigger respect that she knows exactly what's what. And her and her husband are avid art collectors. So these two backdrops that they got were basically their wedding gift that I never got to give them.
Nice. And also, again, no stranger to the biggest names, DJ Khaled and of course Lil Wayne. Um, in terms of the celebrity part of this, now that you're in LA, um, how does that factor into the work you're doing? Are you balancing that out, like just kind of focusing on the high end clients, or are you just getting it out there on the street? Tell me about what's happening in LA.
I'm hitting all levels. I'm hitting all levels. Because forever, the streets are forever. I love the streets. You know, when Nipsey Hussle passed, um, I handed out at probably like 1,000 shirts. You know, LA Apparel donated some shirts. The printer came along and said, "I'll donate my time. I'll make some shirts." You know, I put them in the van, went to Crenshaw, and handed all the shirts out. You know, and had an inspirational message on the back of the shirt. You know,
Nice,
about healing the land, and
nice.
so even though he's a celeb, he was for the people, so I had to do that for the people. It wasn't like I was going to monetize off of it or whatever, because everybody who I asked to get involved, they freely gave their time. That's how important that person was, and me, I feel I'm authentic enough to take on that type of project and go into the hood, and have no fear. I base my career on that. So I hit all levels, because you got to remember, somebody who's a celeb, they disconnected from the streets, and my art is, like, I'm still down. I'm still from here. I'm still here from this. I'm it gives them that connection back to their roots.
Yeah, and one of the things too, again, again, balancing this out, your studio work, you do these commercial works. You're getting out there with this look. You did a Star Wars collab. It was pretty fresh, and you're not afraid to collaborate commercially, and but also keep it real in your authentic self and in your authentic look.
I mean, it's part of the mission. When I saw this stuff on the side of the train, I wanted the whole world to see what we were doing in the Bronx. So this is just a continuation of that mission. you know you're gonna see that this is where it came from, and I'm gonna keep the same style, because it hasn't been fully exposed yet. So there's people that need to see this, and now it's transcended to where these pieces that I've done are now collector's items. They're being resold at high prices, and auctions and different stuff.
I have a question for you. If you look at this image of the Mighty Shirt Kings at the Jamaica Coliseum, if you have any advice for those guys right there, what would it be?
For who, audience, or
For the young you, for the young Shirt Kings?
for the young me, man, I think this I think I've been on the right path for a while. Maybe I don't know, man, because this is more of like a dream come true. Like, as you're doing it, history is being created, but you don't know that you're creating history. So it's it is, you don't know that 20, 30 years later that this is what it's gonna morph into. You can kind of guess. A lot of my peers have done stuff for galleries, during that time already. So I figured this is a way to get my thoughts into a gallery, into a museum setting. So it's just, at that time, I did feel that I was just creating content for what I didn't know, you know.
And on top of that, you were having fun. So, in the final moments, I
Yeah.
want to thank you, but I also want to get our folks to ask you some questions. And someone,
Well,
archive Arrive Arts asked, can you chime in on your relationship with Goldie and the times in Miami?
oh
Goldie, who
wow.
we recently had on, and it's phenomenal. Another one with another phenomenal story.
Yeah. Uh, with Goldie, like I said, a couple of merchants got together in the Coliseum, and we went out to Miami. You know, Gold Teeth Eddie, he had a cousin out there, had a big old house. The family went away to Suriname for like 6 months. So we had the house to ourselves. We bought Bell's Fashion. Bell was kind of like the Brooklyn Dapper Dan. He had a shop on Atlantic Avenue and Nostrand. Very well known. He's actually the first person to do the Nike, velour check suit, and then everybody else just capitalized off of it. And Dapper Dan really uh finalized it. Like he stylized it better. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But Bell was a beast with it. So me, Bell, Gold Teeth Eddie, Kashim, we went out to Miami, and we was in a record shop. I looked at the back of the record and I saw Biscayne Boulevard, and I was like, yo, we're on Biscayne Boulevard right now. And I'm like, let's go up to Luke's office. Like, why not? And everybody thought I was, a little crazy, like, really? And I went up to Luke's office with a photo album, showed him the photos, and he was like, man, I don't really wear this stuff. This is more for the kids. And I was like, yeah, but the rappers in New York are wearing it. And he was like, well, can you paint my club for me? So we negotiated a price, and the price was something that I've never touched that amount of money. I just blurted something out just to, whatever. It's Miami.
Right.
Things are going on down here. I'm seeing 14-year-olds with Porsches and all of this stuff. So I just gave him a high number, and he didn't even flinch. So he was like, look, if you can do it for this price, I'll do this, blah, 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 blah. And we negotiated. And Kashim was like, how did you do that?
Right.
Like, how the hell did you do that? So that made a clear decision that I was going to live in Miami. I was like, I'm living down here. So me and Orlando, which is Gold Teeth Eddie's brother, we popped open a store called New York Connection, which is still called New York Connection to this day. He's on, I think, 79th Street, still doing gold caps. But we were in Carroll City, 183rd Street Flea Market. You know, Probably a year later, I had Deck come down. He came down there for a minute also, because Deck eventually became a shirt king also. So he came down there to help me out. So I always kept the same people around me. But so eventually, when I went back to open the one in Harlem, Goldie replaced me as the airbrush artist, you know, and he learned how to do gold teeth from Orlando and gold teeth Eddie, and he learned the Miami bass, through Luke, and he went back to London as a freaking powerhouse,
Yeah.
and he's reached back like recently, and we've been powwowing on a couple of things, me, him, gold teeth Eddie, there's some projects that we're doing, together. And it's amazing how, he's a full circle person. He came back and got us.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. Tony Crane has a question. With your connection with every aspect of hip hop, do you have any advice for the up and coming MCs?
Well, I'm not an MC, but just be passionate for, what you do. Study the roots of it. When I got into this, uh, my boy Jerry, who got me the High School of Art and Design, I would go through his archives. You know, I learned about the last poets through him. And I would play that record over and over, which is a foundational record for MCs. These amazing guys, that came together and told their story. And at the end of the story, it's like the moral of the story is, it's like there's solutions in their words. So yeah, look those guys up. If you really want to be a poet, look up the last poets, the Gil Scott Herons, read the Maya Angelou's, read Nikki Giovanni, get into that aspect, because it's the same thing. Get into the jazz like Rakim. Rakim's, alliteration is as a jazz musician, he's spitting lyrics as he's an instrument, When then you look at the Michael Jacksons, who the voices are instruments, you got to look at all of this. I used to watch Raheem, do all of these syncope, just like, yo, y'all got to sing it this way, y'all got to sing it that way. You got to look at it as, you Luther Vandross. and you serenading somebody. That's why LL was so great when he did his love records, because he's rapping, but he's serenading, you know, a female.
So you have another question here from Messenger 841. Can you talk about Jamaica Avenue and how Queens hip hop and about Queens hip hop culture, especially sneaker culture on the Ave?
Well, you got to understand that Jamaica Avenue is located in South Side, so you would mostly have people from South Side on Jamaica Ave, and it was wild. So, like the first day we opened up, like about a week later, Jam Master Jay came through when he came off a tour, and he came down the Ave. He wasn't walking by himself. He was like with 100 dudes from Hollis, Queens. You know, 100. I call them Vikings because they were all big, 6 feet, old English bottles in their hands, and nobody messed with them, and nobody messed with Jay. So you have to look at the climate and the atmosphere at that time. You know, people were getting money. So you also had the vultures around that wanted to be like stick up kids or whatever. You know, nobody ever touched the Shirt Kings. You know, we were staples in the community. We were protected by the community. You know, we were examples to people in the community. You know, we didn't sell drugs. You know, we shunned that. You know, all the dealers of that time came to us, the Tommy Mickens and the Supremes, and you know, they were like, the Griff McGriff Supreme and Prince, and they was like, can we get y'all the store and stuff like that? And it was like, no, I'm from the Bronx, so I understood the devastation that drugs and crack has on a society. So I'm not linking with you guys, you know, in no shape, and they respected that totally. So, you know, we stood our ground as Shirt Kings of Queens in Jamaica, Queens, you know. Queens is dynamic, man. A dynamic place. A lot of great rappers, you know, came out of there, especially during that time. And then it spread out to Long Island. And then, you know, we got the masses, you know, like Chuck D and Rock Kims and the Steezos and the EPMDs and the, you know, Keith Murray and Das Effects. You know, it's like on and on. De La Soul, Amityville, like, you know, all
That,
these.
that was a phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal period.
Woo, woo, Tribe Called Quest. Like, really? Like, my goodness, you know?
All Natural asks, how was your experience at Freak City, Hollywood?
Freak City was a rebirth of what was happening, uh, like downtown 81. You know? It was a rebirth of that Andy Warhol era, you know, the Basquiat's, you know, whatever was going on in the village, Freak City pretty much embodied that whole era. You know, they had the vintage clothes, you know, they had uh people coming through. We had people doing videos there, Wiz Khalifa and Gucci, you know, we had Little B, you know, we had all underground people coming through there, you know, underground people who were eventually going to become stars, just like, you know, the time when the Madonnas and all of them were all partying together, and then they became these superstars. So Freak City was, I mean, I love that place, you know, that was like, that was definitely a rebirth of that era, you know. And Delicious Vinyl was a part, and Delicious Vinyl is from that era. So for Delicious Vinyl to be a part of us also, that was like, you know, it was underground club, man. Underground club, you know, selling alcohol late at night, police rushing in, like it was a lot going on, you know. And man, and so now like the people from Freak City, they're making clothes for Billie Eilish now. You know what I'm saying? And she might have been one that was just hanging out, you know, at Freak City, and so through relationship, you know, now they even she's wearing all their clothes. You know, that Valley is great at making clothes. You know, she did a lot of looks for the girl rapper from Queens. Oh my goodness. Oh, Nicki Minaj. You know, those are all Valley's looks. You know, those first colorful stuff. So, you know, Freak City was definitely the bomb in LA for real.
So Bella Makina asks, what's next for you? What are you working on now, and what future projects are in store?
Um, wow. I mean, there's a lot going on. Definitely a lot going on. I guess naturally should be Netflix. You know, get some Netflix things going on. You know, go back to my other passion. You know, film. As far as clothes is concerned, you know, me and LL, who was from Queens, who was a legend, you know, we got together and we just brainstormed and came up with an idea of, you know, some designs for Rock the Bells, you know. So that's about to launch, and it's going to be
Which is
pretty
something we
huge.
showed. Here, let me. We do have a slide of that. So now you've kept a strong ties with L for many years,
Definitely,
and
definitely.
he's just a mega star. He's a mega
Yeah.
personality in our culture and contributor.
Oh, is he? Is he, man? You know, hearing him, I heard him in '83. You know, in with I'm Dangerous. You know, and the world stopped. For me, it did because I was experiencing hip hop from someplace other than the Bronx. The beats were electronic. We had electronic beats, but the beats were just something different, you know. And then his voice was different, and then his rhyme concepts were different, you know. Prior to that, I was used to the Kumo D's and the, you know, the Grandmaster Caz's, but L was different. He had this young energy, you know, battle anybody type energy, you know, and that comes from studying who your elders were, and he embraced that, you know. Then he had to dust some of them off that came at him, you know, and but they all had to do it, you know. The Rakims had to do it, you know. A lot of the elders didn't embrace the new hip hop, and you know the Chuck D's and the KRS Ones. They had to take a battle stance, you know. 'Cause I remember being at Latin Quarters, and these guys were not accepted, you know, and they stood on stage and said, "I'm going to speak my mind. I don't have to be from the Bronx. I don't have to be from, you know, I'm from Long Island, you know, and I'm bad too. You know what I'm saying? I'm from Queens, and you know, so they had to earn their respect. You know, if you really listen intricately to a lot of these songs, they're actually um really battle songs. I ain't no joke. That's like Rakim saying, like, what? I'm not no joke, bro. Like, you don't know who you playing. I'll take 7 MCs and put them in the rhyme, you know, and I'll take 7 more before I go for mines. And that's, you know, he just said that's 21 of y'all ate up at the same time. Like, leave me alone with this. You know, KRS is like, oh, so you're a philosopher. You know, like he's talking some, they're talking to other rappers, you know.
And so, how do you, given that that historically was a common practice with MCs, um, compared to rappers today, right? They're not inclined in the same way, or do you feel they are and don't get credit for it?
I think they're doing a better thing because they've created a camaraderie. You know, it's like let's do songs together. You know, like let's not battle. Let's get this money together. Basically, you know. So I don't think that's there. A lot of times when it's there, it's orchestrated. You know, it's orchestrated like let's get money together, but let's battle. You know, I think like Drake and Meek Mills. You know, you know, I think it was sort of orchestrated, but it was amazing, you know, and who would have thought that the outcome would be, you know, Drake, because he wasn't to us what we felt would be, you know, a New York type of MC, and I think the South had a lot of that, too. Like, because New York, we were really, really not putting people on. We wanted to keep this culture, but it's still spread throughout the world. So the South even build a camaraderie. They don't battle each other. They don't go against each other. They'll get on. Luda will get on a song with Big Boy and Ti, and they created that connection, and I think that's what New York needs again to be brothers again.
Hopefully, this period we're in, this challenging period, this moment of both civil rights and health rights, that we amongst ourselves find, that camaraderie, that peace that you're talking about. And again, it sometimes takes this upheaval to create culture. And
Yes.
so that's what we experience as young men, and possibly that's what people are experiencing now. So you have a question here from I Shoot Everyone. So you're obviously an inspiration for a lot of people in here. Someone who's inspired you through your life.
Um, Case Two, obviously, big inspiration. Dapper
Yes.
Dan, very big inspiration. Um, like I said before, the Last Poets, like that was like, man, like nobody like those guys. Uh, you can say anybody who's mentored me has been an inspiration. I've been blessed to be in company of, people that nurtured, who I am and who I've become, and in turn I could do that to other people.
Yeah.
Jay.
If
Mhm.
Yeah, and if I can interrupt you on that thought, because I'll share something on our thread here from Will Hunt for Designs. What keeps you motivated to keep creating? Also, I met you back in the day and saw you do a mural in PS 41 Park, and that made me want me to be an artist. You've always been humble and a cool brother. So,
Wow. Thanks.
speaking truth to what you've just said.
Wow. That's deep. You don't know when you're giving back, and there's a lot of times, you give back and you shouldn't expect anything. Just just be who you are, and you're gonna create other creators, like knowingly and unknowingly, but just be who God has created you to be, you know. Um I can give you an example why I feel Dapper Dan is one of my greatest inspirations. When I was there when, Sawyer Mayer, when she came with all the lawyers and came to shut down the shop. And prior to that, Dap said, if anybody comes in here, now this is an elder, I don't know what he's talking about. He said, if anybody comes in here and hands you an envelope, don't take it, you know? And sure enough, the next day, somebody came in and tried to hand me the envelope. And I was like, boop. Dap said, don't take it. So I'm not taking it. And the other guy that was with me who heard Dap's instructions, he ended up taking the envelope. And a week later, they came and raided and took my equipment, took everything out of the store. So we took the show on the road. And I'm not from the South. My family is from Honduras and Guatemala. So I'm not, you know, from down south and all of that. So I had no reason to be in the South, but I found myself living in Baltimore and popping a store open out there, and just waiting for Dap to come down with the clothes, picking me up. And then we just keep going down to Atlanta, just selling clothes back and forth, going in every nook and cranny, going in every hood, going where every drug dealer's at. And, they was like, oh, we was coming to stick y'all up. Oh, you Dapper Dan, we seen you on MTV. Oh man, and they'll take us to their bosses, and it was just amazing. But by me being in Baltimore, I ran into, you know, a couple of people out there. And so basically the moral of the story is that all is not lost because, you know, we were kicked out of our store. But if we weren't kicked out of the store, I wouldn't be in Baltimore, and I wouldn't ran into a Jay-Z and told him that Clark Kent is looking for you at Atlantic Records.
So that's the connect. Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I've talked to Clark about that, about you know,
Oh, wow.
his finding. He, you know, claims he discovered Jay-Z, and of course he, you know, was a part of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Who would have thought you were also a part of that story?
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's a guy named Chase that lived next door to Nike that lived in Marcy, and he sounds like Jay. So I was taking Chase in the studio, you know, spending money on him, and you know, I was shopping Chase. And you know, when you hear that one of your peoples is at Atlantic Records and has signing power, and he's an A&R, I'm going to check him. And I played Chase's tape, and he was like, "Man, Fade," he said, "you should get Chase, Jazz, Jazzo, and Jay-Z." But Jazzo was in the Ansar Allah community at the time, so he was like on a train selling incense. He didn't want to rap anymore, you know,
Mm,
and Jay was out in the streets. So I'm like, man, this is gonna be a difficult thing. Lo and behold, get pushed out of Harlem, get pushed to the South, and he was in the South, and you know, and Clark is putting it in his book. He said, you know, people need to know this, that nobody can find this guy except you, you know.
amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's a big part of history.
Yeah.
You got so much love and admiration, man, on the feed. You got a
Uh,
question from Romeo Doha. Question: what was the first couple of airbrush shirts you first made, and which piece would be your favorite? They're separate questions.
The
So,
first couple, yeah, you put the pictures up, that voice, you know,
yeah,
that sweatshirt, the t-shirt. You know, I got turned on to some baseball type t-shirts, and there was a family that moved from Harlem to the end of, they moved, you know, to Barker Avenue on the end of my block, and it was 10 of them. Like that's when they made, you know, families with 10 kids, you know what I'm saying? And all of them, you know, were working and they ordered shirts. They was like, yo, you know, and they went back to Harlem and was wearing the shirts. Another friend of mine, he was a hustler, and he used to go to Harlem and do whatever, you know, and he had a shirt, and that led me to doing one of my favorite shirts because the guy kept asking him, bring the guy down here who did your shirt. And I was like, I don't want no part of this. I'm not even going down there. Eventually, I went down there, met the kid. It was a little kid, and he was in the building hustling. And there was like a pile of money, like up to the ceiling. I couldn't believe it. And there were
damn,
lawyers and EMT workers, and there was police officers. They was all standing on a line for this drug called crack, you know. And they looked at regular people, business suits, everything. And this kid ordered like 10 shirts. He was like, I need 10 shirts. And it
mm,
was just a bubble graffiti style. And I think that was one of my, because that was my first payday. You know, he gave me cash up front. I was so happy, you know. And I think that was one of my best shirts. You know, it
that's
said Babs. Yeah, I got a picture of it too.
that set it off.
Yeah.
Seth asks, what what airbrush did you use? Iwata.
No, I started with Pache and kept Pache up until recently. Now I rock out with Iwata.
Okay. You got you know the airbrush nerds on here tonight. We're all going to ask you airbrush questions because
What's up?
I was down with airbrushing too back in the day. So
I remember
I love that people are asking. Uh, do you prefer a siphene fed airbrush or a top feed airbrush?
Top Feed.
Why?
Well, I use both. You know, Iwata Top Feed. You know, with the Pache, I use the bottom feed because you know I won't say like I'm old school or whatever, but I like mixing my paint in the little cup. I don't like jars. I like, you know, the viscosity of the paint. I gotta see it. I gotta feel it because you know when you paint, it's like an extension of you. So airbrushing is like your soul. Like it's, you don't want to put your soul in a little jar and just hope that it comes out right. You want to make sure that it comes out right because it's a part of you. Like you're spitting the part of your life onto that shirt.
So, given the success of Shirt Kings, what kept you away from screen printing? Just creating a screen print version of your work.
I mean, I used to screen print in '84. When I learned how to airbrush, I would like do my own little screen print. I would do a little graffiti man with a spray can and try to make it as small as a polo. 'Cause I was always into clothes, so I would try to like mimic that and then put our stuff on it. Put a can. I would do a little bit of screen printing here and there. Um, we did that in the Coliseum. We would screen print, but they would go so fast. I think we were on to the Supreme thing like way before, because I mean them shirts would like, so, and we just couldn't understand it. It's like, are we not making enough, or it just they would just go and we just move on to the next design. So we
Did
did.
you have you ever gotten knocked off?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Recently, probably about 2 years ago, H&M, they did the LL design, and I had to give them a cease and desist.
Mm.
Yeah, and there was a little payout too, but yeah.
They weren't interested in collaborating.
No, they went to somebody who they thought they were collaborating with, and that person is the one that did the design over, knowing that Airbrush was coming back, and they just did the design at like some design house. Like I don't even know, but H&M got them to pay. I caught them the first day when it came out because people were
Wow.
like, "Is this
Lucky for
yours?"
you and good for you that
Yeah.
you challenged that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I got
So
I got a good lawyer.
yeah, that's a good advice for all artists out there. Lawyer up. Always have a good lawyer on retainer
Yeah.
to protect your interests.
Yeah.
Um, so Fade, I on behalf of the museum, I want to thank you for taking out so much of your time to talk with me and build up on these stories with us about hip hop history, about fashion history, about culture, um, uh, about this unlikely journey you've had.
Still going.
I've witnessed some of it from the side, so I know you and I've been around you for a minute. Very proud of you and your
Thank
success
you, bro.
and what you've contributed. So with that, if you have any last minute shout outs, please, floor is all yours.
Wow. Um, just shout out to everybody who's been around for a while. Shout out to the new people. You know, shout out to a lot of the new artists that I'm working with now, like the little TJ, and for them to recognize what it is what I do. The ASAP Fergs, the Shy Glizzy from DC, just a whole crop of young kids that really believe in what we do and what we started, collectively, and I'm glad to be of service in that way, that I can bring a little bit of the past into their lives, because this is life changing. This following the path that I followed has changed other people's lives. You know, like I can reiterate again that if I wasn't airbrushing, I would have never met Dapper Dan. I would have never been in Baltimore. I wouldn't have. So this thing, when you do what you are called to do, it will impact, even if it's just one person's life. You know, um, impact to the point where you might create the next Bill Gates. You might be in hand to introduce to the world the next black billionaire. You know what I'm saying? Oh, that's been done already. Yeah, Jay Z. Yeah. Okay. So, you never know where this road is gonna take you, and I just thank God that I've been allowed. People was like, no, don't thank God, thank you. It's your influence and your talent. And I'm like, nah, bro, it's bigger than me, bro. It's way bigger than me, man. Like, I can't even take God's glory from him. Like really? Like, so I'm cool, bro. I'm
So
cool.
let me ask you this: as you use your talent and your goodwill for change, um, given that we are at the height of the Black Lives Movement, the Civil Rights Movement, something you know, oddly enough, you and I were both born into the Civil
Yeah.
Rights Movement, and here we are at a whole different version, a amplified version of it as the world chimes in. How are you using your art and your time towards that right now?
Well, one thing I do understand is that our generation has the key, you know, and whatever we do is gonna riptide through everything else. Our generation can understand and sit down and talk with grandmothers right now, right? We can sit down and talk with an 8-year-old right now. Everybody doesn't have that privilege to do that. It's such a gap in between, and this communication gap, We've been blessed. We're considered the baby boomers, and the baby boomers are able to communicate on so many different levels. So now that we have this gift of art, your art is gonna touch. It's gonna touch a 5-year-old. I
Hmm.
just did something for my boys. He works for Nike, and I sent his son something. His son's 2 years old. He said my son doesn't want to take that hoodie off, man. His son understands. But grandma understands too. So I believe it's in our hands. It's not in everybody's hands. It's in our generation's hand. Remember, we're the first generations to really break things down racially. You know, uh, Graffiti broke down all those barriers. You know what I'm saying? You're from this area. I'm from this area. They're from that area, whatever. And we all parlay together. You know what I'm saying? So they're looking at us for the answer, bro. And we got it, you know?
Well, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. One answer that I did see, I've been figuring out, um, is that the power of the can, the power of the spray can, the power of public art,
Mm,
something that we're in the tradition of, has supported, is playing a
y-
supporting role in the
yes.
way as art should, particularly in the public, right? And the accessibility of the public, but also that you can do that with a great deal of talent, and you can see it with great deal of talent right now.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, Graph has empowered many at the
Definitely.
moment.
Definitely.
You know?
I mean, I got some shirts that I'm coming out, I'm seeing a lot of the generic stuff that's coming through, and I can't be generic. I have to do me. So I got
Of
one
course.
more for the hood, and then one more for the more serious people that will understand. Like, wow, this is the direction that we really need to go to, and really need to ask for. Because if you don't have a goal, then what's the purpose going to be? And the goal has to be so big that this doesn't have to ever happen again. It has to be reparations. It has to be life changing. It has to be new policies. It has to be new way of thinking. you know and we were introduced to that as we grew up in the Bronx and Brooklyn. We were introduced into new ways of thinking through our art. That's why I say we do have the answer. You know, the kids are looking towards us. What they like? What are y'all gonna do? Well, guess what? We just gonna go get some clothes. They got the energy, but they don't have the direction. You know, the grandparents is like, well, we just gonna pray. You know, and we gonna see what happens. Other people like we gonna protest. But if you mesh all that together, it's us. We got it all.
Well, it's all in our hands at the moment, man. And And you know, with that, leaving it at that, I want to thank you again for spending time with me and our, you know, our crew here at the Museum of Graffiti. That they're not here, but we are all in spirit. You know,
Yes,
we support
yes.
everybody that's
Salute.
come and support us. So, well, I'll catch you on the other side of all of this.
Yes,
And
sir.
again, Fade, Shirt King, much respect, brother. Thank you so
Blessings,
much.
bro. My dude. Thank you. Salute.
Take care. Salute.